What is up, guys? Dzeeff here, and today I wanted to talk about Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. Now, this card was released in the TCG just last week. It's one of the biggest secret rares out of Burst of Destiny. It's actually the most expensive secret rare in the set, so a lot of people are obviously very hyped to try this card out. Now, Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer is a Destiny hero monster, and you can play it in your hero or Destiny hero deck, but also very similar to Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, this card can be played in a variety of other decks as well. The big difference here, though, is that with Dragoon, the Fusion card is actually a card you don't really want to draw. But with Fusion Destiny, the fusion spell that you use to bring out Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, that card is actually great to draw because you're allowed to do all sorts of summoning before you use the Fusion Destiny, unlike with Red Eyes Fusion. So I think Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer is a very interesting new dynamic to add into the metagame. A lot of different decks can play this card. You can use different Destiny heroes to send to the graveyard. You don't have to use the ones I'm using, but overall I think the card is very strong, and already it's proven itself at tournaments over the past weekend. Now, in today's video, I wanted to show you my Sword Soul profile. This is very different from the Sword Soul profile from last week because this time I am playing the Fusion Destiny engine, and I kind of wanted to talk about my experience with the card at this local tournament. Now, I will say here, I did go 4-0 with this deck. I don't think that necessarily makes this deck better than the 10-yi version. I actually think I prefer the 10-yi version, but this one does have some merits. We'll go through here and I'll kind of talk about what I played and kind of give my opinion on these new cards that I'm playing in this version. So we are playing, of course, 3 copies of Mo Ye or Mo Yi. You don't even know which one that's supposed to be. 3 copies of the level 6, only 2 copies of the level 4. This card is a lot worse in the non-10-yi version. You don't always have worms in the graveyard. We are playing, of course, 3 copies of Incredible Ecclesia, so this card actually gets even better when you have Fusion Destiny, because during the end phase of a turn where a fusion monster went to the graveyard, you can add this card back to your hand. So Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer gives you a really good follow-up if you are able to open Ecclesia plus Fusion Destiny, which is obviously very good. Now, a lot of OCG builds do this, so I tried it out. I did play 2 copies of Vishuda. This is not really the 10-yi version, but this is still a very good worm monster that you can play, and it was pretty good. I actually found myself a couple times not able to activate my effects because I didn't have any worm monster in my hand, so I'm really glad that I played these because there were a couple other times where this was like the only worm monster in my hand besides like 1 Sword Soul, so I liked playing this card a lot. And then I also played, of course, 1 copy of Destiny Hero Dasher, 1 copy of Celestial, and 3 copies of Fusion Destiny. So these are the cards that you play for this Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer engine. You can play Plasma as well instead of the Dasher, but Celestial is a very crazy card. So this engine gives you a ton of follow-up, not just the Ecclesia, but also the Celestial gets you a draw 2 during the next turn, and then the Dasher can potentially special summon a monster. So this engine was very good. I would say that it's super overperformed, even if I don't think that this version is necessarily better than the other version that I played last week. I think that I can safely say that Fusion Destiny is a very good card, a very powerful card, and Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer is borderline broken. I think some people might argue it is in fact broken because while the card itself on the board might not be better than Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, the fact that you can just summon it with this like 3-of spell that you actually want to draw, and also you can summon it with Anaconda if you want to, I mean, that makes it so powerful. I will say that at this locals, I did not summon Anaconda a single time in this tournament. All the times that I summoned Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer were from Fusion Destiny. Overall, I think that Fusion Destiny and Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer are going to be around in competition for a while now. The card felt very good when I drew it. Moving on here to the other spell cards, we of course played 3 copies of Sword Soul Emergence, 1 copy of Sword Soul Sacred Summon. You could maybe play 2 of this card, but you don't really want to draw it, so I think 1 is fine. I did play 2 copies of Prosperity. I only own 2. This was actually my least favorite card in the deck. It's kind of a big difference between drawing Prosperity plus Mo Yi versus drawing Desires plus Mo Yi, because when you draw Desires in this card, you're drawing 3 cards that turn. You're drawing a card with this, you're chain blocking the Synchro, which is really good, and then you also have the Desires draw. But when you open these 2 cards, it's kind of awkward. Like, what do you do first? And you can't really use this one because then you can't Prosperity the same turn because you can't draw on the turn that you use Prosperity. Prosperity. So I think the card is good. It's obviously very good just in general, but I don't know if I really liked it in this deck. I honestly wasn't really happy when I drew it because it meant that I couldn't chain block the level 8 synchro. It meant that I missed out on that draw. So I think I might cut these for like any random 2 cards, honestly. But I'm sure it's good. People play it in this deck in the OSG a lot, but personally I was not a big fan. And then next up we had some going second cards. So I am main decking 3 copies of Chalice and 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More. I think these cards are great right now. I think that this deck is very capable of going second. It's a little scary not playing any hand traps in the main deck because, yeah, your opponent is just able to always combo off on turn 1, but these cards in combination with also the triple tactics talents that I played 3 copies of, I feel like I have so many ways to break boards going second that I don't really need to play hand traps at all. All 9 of these cards were really insane. I was very happy about main decking the Dark Ruler No Mores. Maybe I would play Forbidden Droplet instead of Chalice, but honestly, like, Chalice came in clutch like multiple times. I stopped the Wind Barrier statue when I played against Flunderies. I stopped Mechaba. That was pretty good as well. For the 1-ofs, we played 1 Called by the Grave. This card is insanely broken. And 1 copy of Instant Fusion. I either could play 1 Instant Fusion or 1 Gold Sark if I wanted to keep it at a 40 card deck. I think between those 2 cards, Instant Fusion is like marginally better than Gold Sark. This card doesn't lose to Token Collector, unlike Gold Sark, which is kind of like a relevant thing, I guess. But Gold Sark is also a bit more versatile than Instant Fusion, which is pretty good too. So it's kind of hard to say, but I think if you are only going to play 1 of them, Instant Fusion is probably better. The 1000 life points doesn't really matter because you do 1200 with the level 6 effect, so you don't even have to worry about like losing in time with that card. But overall, I thought the card was pretty good. I played only 2 copies of Sword Soul Blackout because we are not playing Desires. Honestly, like, I think this card is fine at 2. It's just like, I do kind of want to draw this card. I wouldn't mind playing 3, but it did seem like all right at 2. I never felt like I didn't have access to this card because it's so searchable. And then finally, I played 3 copies of Solemn Strike. It was good. It wasn't like overpowered, but it was a good card. Without the tennies, you usually end on like 1 less negate than you normally would. So I think having the strike is like a pretty good way to have that extra negate. And I think strike is a really good card this format, just in general, especially in the mirror match, because you can hit the synchros on their summon, and it prevents the Sword Soul effect monster effects from activating in the graveyard. It's just like the prank kit effects, as far as I know. Feel free to correct me though, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works, and that's obviously a very good way to win mirror matches. For the extra deck here, 2 copies of the Grandmaster, 1 copy of Supreme Sovereign, 1 copy of the Adamantipator Dragite, 1 copy of Draco Berserker, 1 copy of Crimson Blader, 1 copy of Baxia, you don't need 2 in this version, 1 copy of Yazi, still have yet to summon it, 1 copy of Baron, very good card. I mean, that card's crazy. It definitely feels really, really powerful. 1 copy of the Monk, because we are playing Vishuda, 1 copy of Anaconda, but like I said, I never summoned this, 1 copy of Destroyer Phoenix, such a crazy card. Yeah, I might call this card broken. It's really, really good. And then 1 copy of the Magic Key Fusion, because it is a level 4 tuner monster. Then finally, we have Baguska and Divine Arsenal AA Zeus. These cards are fine. I don't know, maybe Heartland Draco would be better than number 41. Honestly, I never made these cards. I find the synchros usually get the job done. I feel like you don't really need to play the Zeus, but it's in there, I guess. Then for the Psi Deck, which I'll go through real quick, obviously it's a new format. Obviously this is like a local tournament, but I played 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird, 3 copies of Nibiru, 1 copy of the Protoss. Again, I think this card is fantastic. And don't laugh, but I did try to play 1 copy of this Sword Soul. So I played this card for a very specific reason. Basically, at the other tournament that I played with this deck, I lost my friend Ben because he had D-Barrier in games 2 and 3, and I was trying to figure out a way to play around that card because it is kind of tough in the 10E version, but in this version, if you go like monster and then summon a token and they D-Barrier you, the main problem is that the token restricts you to only synchro summoning if you summon from the extra deck. However, if you have this card, which is obviously a 4 of, because you do have the Rhoda for any Sword Soul monster, you can then tribute the token, special summon this, and then make Anaconda to at least make Destroyer Phoenix. Obviously, it's not like the craziest combo you can do, but when your opponent D-Barriers you, otherwise you pretty much can't do anything. Is it a necessary tech? I mean, probably not, but I wanted to try it out. We are still kind of in the experimental phase for this format, so I thought I would give it a try. And I never got D-Barriered, so I can't say how good this card is, but it's probably not worth playing. But then we have 1 copy of Harpy's Feather Duster, 1 copy of Twin Twisters because I couldn't think of a 15th card, 3 copies of Evenly Matched. This card is insane, this format. This was probably one of the best cards in the Psi Deck. And then 1 copy of Red Reboot and 1 copy of Order, which you can sack people with if you go first. Yeah, like I said, I went 4-0 at this tournament. I thought the deck went very well. I'm not sure if I'll continue playing this version or the Tenyi version, but I do want to say that I really liked Fusion Destiny. This card felt very strong. Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer felt very good. I think it is worth the price tag, and this is a deck where you would never play Red Eyes Fusion. That would never make sense in a deck like this, but you can play Fusion Destiny, and that's the real strength of this card, is that you can play it in a lot more decks that maybe couldn't make Anaconda, you know? So I think that Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer is going to be played a lot going forward, and I think it's very good in this deck as well. But is this better than like the Tenyi version? That part I'm not sure about. But Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer is a very good card, and I hope that you guys are trying it out in different decks. I think it's good in a lot of decks, and I think it's a card that has a ton of potential to see even more play in the future. Anyway though, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I'll see you later. Goodbye.